Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I am Amarachi Ubani. This week we set in the agenda for the year 2015. Analysts believe there are issues that have spilled into the new year and have the potential to affect the way we see the world. And take, for example, Nigeria's relations with the United States, where our conversation begins. The U.S. has over time emphasized its strong partnership with Nigeria in many areas, but that relationship, especially on the diplomatic level, may have been strained in 2014.
The United States has always boasted of observing cordial and sometimes really close ties with Africa's largest economy. But relations, as we know, are usually driven by permanent interests. In 2014, the ties were clearly exhibited when the Obama government responded hours after announcement that more than 200 schoolgirls were kidnapped from Chibok town in Borno State.
This is a terrible situation. Boko Haram, this terrorist organization that's been operating in Nigeria, has been killing people and innocent civilians for a very long time. We've always identified them as one of the worst local or regional terrorist organizations there is out there. But I can only imagine what the parents are going through. So what we've done is we have offered, and it's been accepted, help from our military and law enforcement officials. We're going to do everything we can to provide assistance to them. In the short term, our goal obviously is to help the international community and the Nigerian government as a team to do everything we can to recover these young ladies. But we're also going to have to deal with the broader problem of organizations like this that can cause such havoc in people's day-to-day lives.
Weeks later, as promised, the United States sent in military experts to provide logistics and intelligence support for the Nigerian army. Nigeria suffered backlash over its seemingly slow response to rescuing the girls. But weeks after the arrival of international help, it seemed whatever trail was being followed suddenly ran cold. The United States and its ally, the United Kingdom, pushed back responsibility of finding the girls to the Nigerian army, saying they were only in the country to support its decisions and not to lead the campaign. Towards the last quarter of 2014, the U.S. rejected appeals by the government for weapons and helicopter gunships to fight Boko Haram. The fallout was Nigeria requesting the suspension of a U.S. military training system for the Nigerian army. A statement from the U.S. Embassy in Abuja said, "At the request of the Nigerian government, the United States will discontinue its training of a Nigerian army battalion." Nigeria then turned to Russia, America's European enemy, for help instead. That's a move supported by some analysts.
You know, if you're tied to the apron spring of a particular country, and whenever there's a crisis, they could give excuses why they're not going to sell arms to you, then I think it's your own fault.
Trade relations between both countries also seems to be on a downward trend. That's been most obvious in Nigeria's oil trade with the United States. Due to America's search for alternative oil, the country, for the first time in July 2014, stopped importation of crude oil from Nigeria. Nigeria used to be the 5th largest exporter of crude oil to the United States, but while U.S. crude imports rose by 569,000 barrels per day in July, there have been no imports of Nigerian oil. The White House said the cessation of imports from Nigeria was because of a significant rise in U.S. oil production. It also said U.S. oil production rose by more than 50% to over 8.5 million barrels per day, and with such a turnout, the country was producing more than it imports. While diplomats from both countries disagree the above has anything to do with reaction and counter-reaction, perhaps Nigeria abstained from a major UN Security Council vote on a UN resolution to end Israeli occupation of Palestinian territory of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip by 2017 proves that all is not lost.
Voted against the resolution.
The vote had been conducted on Tuesday last week, and it required 9 votes from 15 permanent and non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council.
Countries of the resolution are really
While Russia, China, France, Luxembourg, Jordan, Argentina, Chile, and Chad voted for the resolution, Nigeria, Britain, South Korea, Rwanda, and Lithuania abstained.
the recently revealed CIA torture.
Nigeria, through its envoy in the United Nations, Professor Joy Ogwu, said Nigeria had taken the position at the last minute because it sided with the United States' position that the ultimate path to peace between Israel and Palestine could be better achieved by negotiation.
Let's begin with the elephant in the room, and that's Nigeria-U.S. Relations. There were three defining moments when it seemed the relations between both countries would have gone south. And that's with the search for the Chibok schoolgirls, the sale of arms, and the sale of oil. What do you make of the way Nigeria and the United States have related this year, and how do you think that will either progress or fall short in 2015?
I think Nigeria's relationship with the United States has been at its lowest ebb in terms of the Chibok schoolgirls. I think many Nigerians are yet to understand what has happened, why the U.S. reneged on using its drones to solve the problem. So as I speak with you now, I'm yet to appreciate what transpired. As it relates to the sale of arms, I think the initial hype was on our human rights record. That is so bad, and as such, they cannot sell arms to us. But even if they cannot sell arms to us, I wonder why they are disrupting or interfering with third countries trying to sell arms to us. The example of what happened with our attempt to purchase arms from South Africa shows that you cannot remove America's hand from what transpired. So it got to a point that our own ambassador to the United States had to criticize the United States government. That shows that all is not well with the relationship. Then, in respect of purchase of oil, I think Nigeria is now being much more patronized by China because U.S. has concentrated more with buying oil from the liberated, those countries it helped to liberate. It helped to liberate Iraq, it helped to liberate Libya. It might be getting a better deals from those countries. Besides, Saudi Arabia remains its key ally in terms of supply of oil. So as at 2013, the total cost of doing business between the United States and the whole of Africa was $85 billion, whereas it was $210 billion with China. So I think Nigeria is looking the way of China these days, and I think over time, with what has happened in terms of at the United Nations Security Council, the recent voting concerning the Palestinian question, whereas Nigeria tended to listen to the United States and Israel. Perhaps that may help in easing out the relationship.
Yeah, but I also wanted to pick on something you just said, which is that the relations have been called into question. You say that the U.S. relations with Africa seems to have gone south because of the U.S. said that now they have shale oil, and they all seem to be turning towards Asian countries now. They seem to be the new market. How do you think, what implications do you think that will have for Africa, considering that President Barack Obama held a meeting last year, the biggest and the first for the United States, for U.S. African leaders to sit down and discuss trade possibilities and the improvement of trade ties between African countries and the United States? How do you compare the way we've been treated, I mean, the recent status in our relations with, the proposals that the U.S. government has made last year?
I think the African Leaders Summit that was held in August in the United States, I think that's what you are referring to. The relationship between Africa and United States was re-examined. But notwithstanding, with the aggressive diplomatic and strategic inroads that China has made into Africa, you can see that China has gone beyond, whereas China's investment in the manufacturing sector in Africa is about 15%. That of the United States is about 5%. So the United States is much more interested in dealing with Africa from the perspective of oil. And now that it is shifting its interest more to Middle East and Asia, so our trading is coming down. So the implication, notwithstanding that meeting, that conference, it will take a long time before United States will attain a higher status in trading with Africa. I give you an example. China has 27 trade agreements with independent African countries, whereas United States has only 6. And there is no preferred status, preferred trade agreement with any country in Africa. So you can see there are signs on the ground to show that American investors, they look more towards Asia, Latin America, than Africa. So the implication is that Africa will continue to take the back seat in terms of its relationship with the United States for even in 2015. There are no signs, I don't think there are clear signs to show that there will be tremendous improvement. Because even the AGOA, the African Growth Opportunity Act, yes, which it will be reviewed, I think, in 2015. And in the course of the review...
Well, this is 2015.
Yes, this year. It's going to be reviewed, and some of the favorable clauses may no longer be there. They may be taken away. And, it deals mainly with textiles and clothing. There used to be World Trade Organization agreement on textiles and clothing. That had been abrogated because that allowed a situation where continents could be given quota. In the absence of quota now, and with the increase in production of textiles in Bangladesh, which is an Asian country, and some other Asian countries, I think AGOA may no longer be as favorable as we think. Recently, Gambia was shackled out of the list because of what America calls its human rights record. So it seems generally that it is not yet to hurry for Africa in terms of its relationship.
Coming up after the break, the future of ISIS and other terrorist groups, and will Russia instigate a third world war? Please join us again.